The performance I've narrowed in on is a performance by His Majesty King Carl XVI, Gustaf of Sweden, bestowing the Order of Seraphim on his grandchild, His Royal Highness Prince Oscar, at his christening. I will start by showing a 1-minute clip for you to enjoy, and for the non-English speaker in the congregation I put on some subtitles in English.
Serafimerriddare eftersom han kommer att ta emot Serafimerorden. Och det är ordenskanslern, tidigare riksmarskalken Ingmar Eliasson, som kommer fram med doporden, inte den riktiga stora orden, för den skulle vara för stor att fästa på ett litet barn förstås. Den riktiga orden kommer prins Oscar att bära först när han har fyllt 18 år. Serafimerorden, som är Sveriges främsta orden, med anor från mitten av 1700-talet.
So, this is a case study on the performance and performative utterance by world-famous performance artist His Majesty King Carl XVI's Gustaf of Sweden. The performance took place on the 27th of May 2016 in the Royal Chapel of the Swedish Royal Castle in Stockholm. During the ceremony, just after the baptismal act, His Majesty the King approached the infant Prince Oscar and bestowed upon him the Order of the Seraphim. This act formally confirmed the young prince's status as belonging to the Swedish monarchy. So I imagine this will be a little bit confusing, so I will offer some background to why I chose this particular case to study, as well as reasoning why and how I framed the king as a performance artist. In 2014, I accidentally became the monarch of a brand new micronation. I was writing an application for an artistic working grant, we've all been there, in which I wanted to stress the importance of having grown up in Lorenzburg, a residential district in the city of Karlstad in Sweden. My fingers Freudian slipped on the keyboard and I typed Lorenzburg rather than Lorenzburg. This stipendous mishap was the beginning of a lifetime commitment to be the main representative of a modern fairy tale nation and large-scale super-local art and culture project. The flag of our fledgling nation sports the P from the famous fairy tale of the Princess and the Pea, because obviously mythological peas and magical micronations share the same characteristics of being but tiny things, however with the capacity to affect great change in the world. The Renaissance thinker Niccolo Machiavelli wrote in his famous statecraft manual for rulers that one can become a prince by birth, by violence, simple luck. Since Freudian typing myself into becoming the Prince of Lorenzburg, I have determined to add a category to Machiavelli's list, the possibility of becoming a prince through art. As a reigning prince of a tiny Scandinavian monarchy and as a performance artist and scholar, His Serene Highness Prince Frei of Lorenzburg performed a ceremony in Gallery Box in Gothenburg as part of a performance festival in August of 2020. The ceremony was a royal proclamation of a new artistic field called the Royal Performative Arts, which is a performance and performative arts genre exclusive to monarchs and other working royals. In the ceremony, His Serene Highness Prince Frei symbolically moved portraits of historical and contemporary royal colleagues from a socio-historical field onto the art field. In this act, He claimed that all working royals are, in fact, performance artists, similar to professional ceremonial hostess entertainers such as drag queens or geishas. As such, working royals are trained and highly skilled performers operating in a narrow and very specific aesthetic. And if anyone here is curious about that particular ceremony, I'll be happy to share it after the presentation. So, in 1917, artist Marcel Duchamp placed a signed urinal in the gallery and called it a ready-made sculpture. And this act changed the art world forever. In 2020, Prince Frei of Lorenzburg placed all monarchs on the art field and proclaimed that henceforth they are to be viewed as performance and performative artists. Framing all working royals primarily as performance artists rather than members of a hereditary elite offers new ways to critique the institution of the monarchy. Individual gestures or events performed by working royals can now be judged based on the quality, the merits, and the skills of a particular performer. My performance ceremony in Gallery Box aimed at setting up a counter-public, a rival narrative of what monarchs are and what they do. And so with this little detour, I hope my reason and reasoning for choosing the topic of this case study should be clearer. So, back to the king. So, regarding methods of the short clip that you saw of the performance, the performative act, the performer draws on a royal lineage as legitimate source of something called fons honorum, the capacity to performatively transmute subjects into nobility, or to bestow other orders or honors. By vesting himself in certain regalia and symbols, the king makes an aesthetic, symbolic, performative utterance in front of an audience of prominent, rich, and famous people to lend further legitimacy to one of his own bloodline. This act of royal stage blood magic, a sleight of hand trick, makes a prince appear from the flesh of an ordinary human child. The performance echoes of the ancient concept of the divine right of kings by special blessing by remote God to give the monarch carte blanche to act as an executive of divine will. To the audience of the performance, the artifact of the royal order is an elusive game element, a reward that seems to hold the promise of elevation and distinction to anyone who knows how to play and win the social game of royal favorites. For this performance, the artist must be carried by an extended body of court officials, as well as all the trappings of marble, silk, and gold, in order to carry the proper weight to be able to function as a king. And about the social role of the artist in this piece, I would say that the artist is the hub of spatial and social regime that forces everyone in his proximity to always relate to his presence. He is an agent who sends out performative space and social constituting ripples around him, bending the fabric of social space according to the rules of the game. And the game, of course, is a Borgesian field of social magic, illusion, which means that players of the game enjoy the benefits of playing along, as long as they uphold the fiction that the game is real. I also have some critique of the performative piece we watched. I think there's an element of precariousness that must at all times be negotiated. The actual power dynamic is a direct opposite to what a superficial reading of the performance would suggest. That the king only has the power to perform performative utterances as long as other people let him do so by participating in the fiction. And a personal note, as a colleague on the field, regarding the performance skills and innovation of the performative craft. I don't think that the king succeeded very well. He's famously awkward and dull in social situations. He's not very good at improvising, and I think this piece that we've seen doesn't show any evidence that he's moving the craft or his art along. I'll be very happy to send him a few notes of feedback at some point. There are some theories at work in this piece that I have identified. For reasons of timekeeping, I don't have time to articulate my thoughts about them, but I offer them anyway. So game theory is one lens to look at this work through. Field theory, theories on performativity, precariousness, which is interesting because precariousness, and I don't know too much about this, so I'm going out a little bit on a limb, but I've seen it mentioned in context of working and work distribution, and how one speaks about working, especially for people who don't have a secure income, which of course the King of Sweden has. So precariousness in this situation is used somewhat differently. There are also some historical auxiliary sciences at play, and some key terms, which are performativity, fons honorum that I mentioned, illusio, social magic, precariousness again, and game elements. And in terms of potential research questions and speculative thoughts coming from this work, I have a few questions. Can a king be a king without a court and crown? And how would that work? What sources of performative power are available in times that do not accept the divine right of kings? What is the foundation of the fons honorum of the king when you can't invoke divine right of kings? And I think this performance may invite artists, such as myself, to experiment with different media and aesthetics. I'm left with the question, how far can a royal performer push the art form in the 21st century? And a potential lesson to be learned from this case, and now I speak as a colleague and practitioner of royal performative arts. A royal performer who has large resources at hand in terms of historical, traditional, cultural and economic capital will be able to perform better magic, social magic that is. So the lesson here is to get rich and convince plenty of friends to choose you for their monarch. And I think that is basically it. I have a short bibliography if you're curious. Some of them an essay how to do things with words, led out some ideas on speech acts, performative speech, and that developed my work into performative gestures, performative artifacts even. I've also looked into, of course, the sacred monarchy and divine rights of kings, and especially the French and English monarchs with a kind of holy magical war of which monarch was the most magical in terms of having magic powers. The field of cultural production, the playing man on Woodlands, and I also have an article on game theory, short article, which I've only skimmed through, I have to confess. And yeah. That's my spiel.